How's it going, everybody? I want to just talk to you quickly about the reliability of the data. Can you trust the numbers that you're seeing in there? Are they actually accurate? How accurate are they? All these different little scenarios. And the reality is that the data is not 100% accurate across the board. There's going to be some properties that are going to be spot on. There's going to be some that are definitely wrong, like without a doubt. And there's going to be some that have a variance from their true revenue number of anywhere from 10 to 20 to 30%. And that's just the reality of scraping data. You never truly know exactly how much the property is actually making, but you're getting a fairly close prediction. Now, what do you do about that, right? Like, so you might be thinking to yourself, like, well, that's pretty scary. That's pretty insane. Like, I'm kind of nervous now about using this data to make a prediction. And I can understand that, right? However, with that being said, you're going to learn the entire process that I'm going to be teaching you, which is going to show you how you can work with the fact that it's not perfect, okay? And still get the right answer. And I'm going to prove that right now. So I'm going to show you this sheet, which is TechFester's actual data from properties that we have had live for a variety of times. So you can see some have been around for over 500 days, some have been around for almost 300 days. There's a variety of homes that have been around within that time frame. There's even more within there as well, but I'm just showing the ones that we have enough data collected on to be able to actually give a true number. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because what I'm going to explain after this will prove that that it actually works, okay? So I have been predicting how much I thought that each individual property that TechFester was going to purchase, how much it was actually going to make. And so then therefore, now that we've had the properties up and running and I have predictions out there, I say, hey, this property is going to make $100,000. And then we manage it for the entire year. I can figure out how accurate or how close I was to that actual prediction. And if you look at this column right here, which is the percentage of performa, you can see that it shows how close I was to actually getting it right. And what you'll notice is I'm very conservative. And so if I say a property was going to make $100,000, what this is telling you here is that the property actually made $123,000. And so then therefore I was 23% below what it actually ended up doing. And if you were to review all of these properties and go through every single last one of them, you would notice that I'm off by 25% conservatively, which I am totally okay with. Being off by 25%, but being conservative by 25% means that we're doing a really good job, right? So based off all the data I was reviewing, I thought we'd make $100,000. We ended up making $125,000. Nobody's mad because the property worked at $100,000. And everything above that is just gravy on top, right? It's a cherry on top of everything else. And so then therefore it works out. And so as you can see, most of these, this is the worst one that you can see here is 88%. That's still only off by 12%. But everything else is almost either really accurate or some properties are off by quite a bit, but we just did really, really well with those properties. What I'm trying to say is that, again, how do you trust the data? And I'm saying you can't just solely trust one piece of data. You can't. But what you can do is you can take a collective of data. So in other words, you can take a good grouping of data, and then you can make an educated decision based off of that. And you can also find patterns within the data that help it become more reliable and more believable. And so in other words, what ends up happening, right, is if you have this grouping of data right here, and let's actually go from 40 to 30, okay? So we've got properties, this many properties right here that are roughly all doing about $30,000 a year. I can guarantee you some of these are 100% accurate, some are a little bit above, some are a little bit below. But what happens is when you go through all of these, you will be able to see that these ones up here should look better, be bigger, be better properties, have better photos, have more amenities, whatever it is that's allowing them to do better than the ones that are down here. It'll make logical sense as you're going through the data. You can see the patterns of why one property would be making more than the other. And then what will happen, and I guarantee this will happen, is you will go through and one of the properties makes no sense. So let's say it's this one right here. This one looks way worse than all the rest. It is a worse building. It's got worse photos. It's got worse design. And you can't logically make sense as to why this property would be making as much as the rest of these properties here. It just doesn't add up, right? And the reality is that's a bad piece of data, even though it looks like it's a good piece of data. In other words, it passed our is it bad data test. It passed it. However, there's still something wrong with it. And that would be the algorithm screwing up how much that property actually ended up making. And so what I'm trying to point out here is that you cannot rely on one piece of data. You have to review a good chunk of data within a certain area and then see the trend of those properties and be able to logically and reasonably understand why one would be making more than the other to be able to trust all of them. And when you do that, then you can trust the data. Then you can know, okay, this is very clear pattern. This one, these, 5 very clearly are doing better than these 5 for X, Y, and Z reasons. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense that they'd be making more. And then the same thing happens with these ones. It's very clear why they're making so much more. And so then you start to be able to believe the numbers that you're looking at more and more and more. And you go, okay, this makes sense. I can trust the number that I'm looking at here. And I believe that it's actually going to work out. And then if you're like me, you don't assume that you're just going to make the top amount like everybody else is. Even if your property is extremely comparable, you still bring it down a little bit and say, hey, we're probably going to make, let's say we make 25% less, right, than what we think it's actually going to end up making. And if it makes 25% more, then everybody's really happy, right? But that's the general idea when it comes to, hey, can I trust the number that I'm seeing here? And the reality is, no, you can't trust just one piece of data. You have to have a good grouping of data to be able to fully know if it's going to be right or wrong, okay? I can't stress that enough. I hope that was helpful. Hope that makes sense. Hope that wasn't too confusing. But the reality is that if you follow the process, you follow the data, you follow what I'm talking about over all this, it will work out. And I just proved to you that it does, okay? So I'll see you in the next video.